Hey, this is Blake with Worn & Wound, and today I'm going to take a look at two watches from the Obris Nevin line. They're two new releases from the company, and you might be familiar with a watch that we reviewed a few months ago called the Obris Bronco. And so this is their next release. They're a Hong Kong-based manufacturer. And so the Nevins come in a number of finishes, both bead blasted, brushed, and black PVD coating. You have some options as to the color of the dial as well as the color of the minute hand. And they both feature Miyota 8215s. And obviously some interesting sort of more modern design elements. What's also really great about these is they are quite affordable, ranging in price from $250 to $270 US. So let's take a closer look. Looking now at the case of the Nevin, the watch was designed with sort of the intention of making something that referred back to sort of a vintage retro diver aesthetic, but that had some more modern sort of features or design elements. So as you can see, it's got a barrel case here. The case measures 43 millimeters in diameter. It's 14 millimeters tall, and it's got a 22 millimeter lug width and a 49 millimeter lug to lug width. So obviously some of the features that stand out, as I mentioned, is the barrel case, but also this bezel here. So all of the watches, all of the Nevins feature this sort of blanked out bezel with just this sort of dot of lume here at 12 o'clock. It's definitely an interesting look, much more modern than what you might find otherwise. And the bezel does have a nice feel to it. If anything, it's a bit rigid at times, but it does snap into place nicely, and it seems to be lining up well with all of the indices, so that's really nice. Turning it here to the side, you can see, as I mentioned, the 14 millimeter height of the watch. There's also here about a 4 millimeter crown with the Obris signature, which is nice, and that's got a nice feel to it. It's a screw down crown that has a nice sort of tactile response and a nice firmness to it, and it's really easy to adjust. And then turning here to the back, it's obviously just sort of a screw down case back with the Obris logo and some details about the watch. This watch in particular, as I mentioned earlier, you have choices with the finish of the watch. So here we have an example of the blasted finish with stainless steel, but then also we have here an example of the PVD black coating. It's a really nice, even matte PVD black. Obviously, we'll talk about it later, but it comes with this nice matching 5-link bracelet that the coating matches very cleanly, and you see obviously the PVD black coating throughout. There's an option for a brush finish, which we didn't get in for review, but all in all, the finishing on these cases is very nice. The machining on each of them has been very nice, and as I mentioned, you get this nice response with the bezel, and the crown does feel really nice. So all in all, the case of the watch has a really nice, well-machined feel to it. All right, so now we're going to take a closer look at the dial of the Nevin. So as I mentioned, again, we had choices in the colorway of the dial and the actual watch case that we received. So in this case, there's a blue dial with orange minute hands, and on the silver watch, which we'll see in a second, has a black dial with a yellow minute hand. So the dial of the Nevins they're very simple, they're very clean. I think they provide sort of a more modern sort of military aesthetic a little bit. You can see here that the hours are indicated with large hash markings, and then at 12, 3, 6, and 9, they have sort of a small triangle that sort of sit atop that hash marking. Also printed on the case, or excuse me, on the dial, we have the Obris name, the word mechanical, and then actually, instead of using the Nevin name, they use the reference number, which I can read here. It says reference D012.02.A. And then beneath that, we have the 200 meter water resistance mentioned there. And then, of course, the word sapphire. These do have a sapphire crystal. Looking at the hands, both the second and minute hand, or excuse me, the second and hour hand are stainless steel, polished stainless steel. And as is the large minute hand, but that of course has been painted orange in this case, and all of the hands are filled with lume. There's lume found on all of the hour markings, and that's actually glows blue as well as the hands, and then the lume dot on the bezel actually glows a green. And then here we can look at the dial of the silver model, or the blasted model of the Nevin that we were discussing. So here, of course, you have the black base with the yellow hour hand. And again, it's the exact same dial, just you do get those color variations. And I think, generally speaking, the black and the gray matches really nicely. But yeah, just showing you another example of what the color combinations look like. All right, so now you can take a look at the Nevin on the wrist. It actually sits very comfortably. The dial is super small, so it sort of gives the appearance of a slightly smaller watch, I find, when it's on the wrist. And the 43 millimeter case, you know, it is on the larger side, but, you know, I have a slightly larger wrist, so it fits just fine. I think if you had, you know, maybe a wrist that was under 7 inches, maybe you'd have some trouble with it. The bracelet is also really appealing, so I like it came with these 5-link metal bracelets. I think they're really attractive. They're very, very heavy. The weight listed on the website is about 250 grams, so it is a little bit on the heavier side. But, you know, if you're used to wearing a bracelet, you very well may be used to that. It does come with this nice deployment buckle with the Obris logo here. And one note, it was very easy to change the size of the bracelet. It comes with a one-sided flathead screw to adjust the links. And so it was really easy for me to sort of size this to my wrist. I think you'll find that to be the case yourself. The height of the watch, as I mentioned, is 14 millimeters, so it's a little bit taller. But again, if you're you know, a dive watch fan and you're used to wearing dive watches, I'm sure that's something that you've sort of come to terms with before. So that really shouldn't be a problem. And just quickly, just want to show the black PVD version of the Nevin on the wrist. So it's a lot of black on your wrist. It's a very sort of stealthy, aggressive look, especially with this bigger 5-link chain bracelet. So again, it might be a look that's more for some than others, but again, if you're into sort of the more stealthy black divers, then this is a really interesting look, and at $250, you know, you can't really go wrong. All right, so now we're just going to take a quick close look at the Nevin packaging. So it comes in this nice rigid box, nice and small, something you could keep on your shelf. And you just pop it open. It's got this nice metal buckle on the front. It actually comes with, in this little glass tube, an extra lug bar, which is nice. And then it comes with this envelope that's filled with your warranty card and some tips on activation, basically just telling you to wind the watch 10 times before you wear it. And then just a booklet on the various components of the watch, etc. So that's pretty nice. And then under this foam, you obviously just have the watch here sitting on a pillow, protected by foam throughout, and on the top here. Again, a nice package. It's going to keep the watch safe, and it's something you can keep the watch in for storage long term. So in conclusion, the Obris Nevins are another sort of very interesting, affordable option from the brand. They've got this nice barrel case that sort of harkens back to a retro diver aesthetic, but with these very modern elements, like sort of the ghosted bezel and sort of the more sort of clean, aggressive dial. There's also, you know, a really great element to these watches that you can sort of design certain elements of yourself, in the sense that you can pick the minute hand, you can pick the finish of the case, and you can pick the dial that it comes with. So you have a lot of options there, which is also really great. But sort of most notably is the price. The two models we reviewed here, the blasted version on the left sells for $259, and the PVD version is $269, and there is a brushed version for $249. So all of these watches, you know, considering that they feature sapphire crystal, have a very, you know, relatively good build quality, and have a Miyota 8215 movement, and, you know, a quality movement that, you know, you've seen in a lot of other watches of, you know, considerably higher prices. This is, you know, definitely something that is a great deal if you're interested in the aesthetic, and you know, these watches appeal to you. So thanks for watching. Make sure to check out the full review on warriorwound.com, and you can follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. Thanks.